So the idea behind this video was to combine two identical non-working turntables and make one work. The turntable on the right is mine. I've had it for years, and it's seen better days. The drawer is broken. It doesn't slide in and out on its own. You have to pull it in and out. The gears are broken. But everything else works except for the case being broken. The one on the left I purchased. I was told that it was missing parts and that, as you see here, the drawer does not open. But the case is actually in great condition, which was kind of odd. So I thought, well, between the two of them, I can combine the parts, make one work, and have a turntable again. And because this model turntable generally goes between $125 to say $700 on eBay, new old stock, I wasn't exactly going to buy a brand new one. So as you'll see, when I actually opened this up, I got more than my money's worth. I paid about $80 for this, which is extremely inexpensive for this model. So the first thing I want to do is get this thing apart and see what's actually inside of it. Up until this point, I hadn't even opened it yet, so I wasn't sure what I was in for. I didn't know if it had been stripped of all its parts or not. I knew it didn't have a platter, and I didn't think it had a Tonearm, but upon receiving it, I realized it actually did come with a Tonearm. Now, I will say, if you're going to purchase any of these, be extremely careful. The case, the plastic that they made the case out of, or not the case, the cover, is extremely brittle. On my other unit, just pulling the cover off, the side of it snapped in my hand. The other thing I would say is the clear tinted plastic that's in the front of it, that here, I'll show you here, that part there with the Sony logo on it, that breaks very easy as well. Something happens to the plastic with age and it just gets very brittle. So if you're going to work on these, the first thing you want to do is remove that. I have not been able to find just that piece. Apparently it's very, very common for that to break and then go missing or what have you. So the first thing you want to do is, what I'm going to do here is just remove that and put it someplace safe, because like I said, I don't want it breaking. And really the part that breaks are the tabs that get screwed to the actual arms of the machine that hold it on. So you want to be very careful when you take it off. Okay, so let's take the bottom off. Let's see why. Let's see if there's any voltage going to the motor, or if it's just a safeguard from there being no platter. Hold on. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so something I just noticed. These screws here and this. Now, when they originally shipped these, and I did notice this when I just opened it up. I'm not sure if you can see that in there. But there's a little, here's the Tonearm, which I didn't think this came with, but it actually did. There's a little piece of plastic underneath of it, and that's to hold the Tonearm in place so that during shipping it doesn't move. But they also put something so the drawer doesn't open, and that's what this is. And I just found the manual, and it says to remove these pieces and screws, as well as this. And it says there's a screw that has to be removed so that the Tonearm can move. Either the person who shipped this, where'd that screw go? Let me put this back in. Either the person who shipped this was kind enough to lock everything down, or they didn't know what they were. See, when they, let me take this out and see what happens. The description said it was missing parts, and it was to be used as a parts repair only. And they said the problem was, they said it was cosmetically it was in good shape, but the drawer didn't open. Since I have two of them, figured we could make it work. This might be the reason the drawer's not opening. This is just going to be incredible if that's the case. Now, did that unlock? Yes, it did. Moment of truth. I gotta see if this works. Oh, this thing is heavy. Power. Oh, you gotta be kidding me. No way. Now I wonder if does this Tonearm move? It does move, but there's some, that's just old grease. And this thing is in near mint condition with some dirt, obviously. You know, I'm wondering, I'm betting. I'm wondering if somebody found this in a basement or in storage someplace. And I bet the platter that would go here was shipped separately, or not shipped separately, shipped separately in the box so that it didn't come out during shipping. It was probably wrapped in, you know, plastic with some styrofoam around it, and this was kept in storage. And the person who got it out of storage didn't know what they were looking at, so they just said it was broken. The only thing I noticed is that there's no cartridge or needle or stylus. So I don't know what happened there. But that is incredible. Alright, so let's do this. Alright, so this is the platter from mine, from the other one. Let's see. And it spins. So since I got it apart, let's lube this up some. Let's change out all the grease. I think this was made in 1983. And if this truly has been sitting in a basement someplace, or sitting around in storage, or even if it hasn't been, it hasn't obviously been maintained. So what I want to do is change all the grease. It tends to get gooped up, or it tends to harden over time. That's plastic. That feels like it's just oil. And all I'm using is a rag with some rubbing alcohol to get that old stuff off. And this isn't grease, this is just regular oil. Now what you can use as lubricant for these, mineral oil works really well. Marvel's Mystery Oil, the red stuff, smells really good. That's essentially 98% mineral oil, and the other 2% is coloring and a scent. Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to use some of this because it's a little bit thicker. Doesn't really say what's on it. Okay, what I'm going to do is just add a little bit of oil. Because I want to get it all over. I want to get it on the bottom too. Now the one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to add too much. You add too much, it'll drip, and it will attract dust, or dust will be attracted to it, whatever you want to say. But the thing is, yeah, and if and what's going to happen if dust gets on there, it'll gum it up, and really, I mean, I don't care because I can take it apart and clean it again. The only thing you don't want is if it's not going across in an even motion, it could damage your vinyl, but it isn't too bad. It's actually not as much as, actually it's a little bit more than what was on there. I'm okay with that. And all I'm doing is just adding some oil to a cloth. And then run this back and forth. So now that's done. Let's put the plate back on and flip it over. Okay, so now we got all the screws out. Let's take a look at the inside. So here, that's the track that the motor runs on. It uses it as a brace so that the drawer can slide out. And the drawer slides very nicely. There's some grease in there, and it is kind of, it's getting kind of old. Okay, so what I'm going to do is check. There's a belt over here. And that belt actually feels pretty good. Might replace that just as a preventative measure, but it looks like it's working. Okay, so here's a worm gear coming off the motor, connects to here. This grabs onto the gear that's on the bottom plate, and that pushes the tray back and forth. Now this lithium grease doesn't feel too bad, but I'm going to replace it anyway, just since we're in here. So you can use isopropyl alcohol to clean the grease off. However, being that these are plastic parts and they're fairly old, I don't want to risk drying them out any more than they already are. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to clean them with just dish soap. Bring them down to the sink and clean them off with dish soap. Now, as far as the worm gear, that's going to have to be, I'm not taking that all apart. So I have some isopropyl alcohol on this rag, or on this cloth, and I'm just going to run it over the motor while it's spinning to try to get as much off as I can. Yep, and that took it right off. Now when you take this off, you want to be careful. The little washer, and you have a lock ring. Keep those on. In this panel, there's a screw that holds it in. Take that off. And it just lifts out. So I'm going to go clean these off in the sink, and I'll be back. Okay, so I got these cleaned up. Now any bit that doesn't come out, you're going to notice there's still going to be some in the teeth. Now you could let this soak. I didn't let this soak for very long. I just wanted to get all the stuff off the surface, but anything that's stuck in between the teeth, you just want to take a flathead screwdriver. I don't know if you can see all that. It's coming off on the screwdriver. You want to clean out all the teeth. And get as much of this old stuff off of it as possible, because we're going to add new. So before you put this in, put a little bit of... I'm using white lithium grease. You can use white silicone grease, whichever works for you. Just want to dab some of that in there. Probably used a little bit too much there, but that's okay. Put the washer on. Okay. So now we drop just, oop, a little too much on my part. Okay, now this is going to fit, now that we have that on, this is going to fit here, obviously connected to the lid, or to the bottom, but you're going to need to lubricate both sides. All I'm going to do is just smear it on. May not be pretty, but gets the job done. Because we're not going to be able to do this once we put it together. Although I can run it through. And just smear it on. It's not going anywhere. Alright, so we got on there, we got some in the back there. It's time to put this thing back together. And I was going to add some to the tracks, but I think the tracks are actually still pretty good, so it slides really easy. I just gotta remember where I put this, or where this goes. I believe this goes this way. Okay, so let's see if this thing opens, how it opens now. About the same. Seems like it comes out a little bit faster, but that's okay. Move this back and forth. Alright, so the table I have and this does not need lubricating because it has to fit up against this bushing here, or post, whatever you want to call it. And that's what moves the table. It's a direct drive. So let's put the needle on it. And essentially, this piece here plugs in. This is the cartridge. Again, I'm going to get yelled at for not using gloves when I do this, but that'll be alright. Alright, so that goes in there. The needle's not on it right now, the stylus. That's separate. And I need to get a stylus anyway because I don't know if there's any life left in that one. But bring this out all the way. You know, God forbid they actually gave you a Phillips screw instead of one of these, because then you could use a magnet with it, but whatever. Let's just take this off, make it a whole lot easier. That doesn't want to come off. Yeah, this has to go through. The other side. I gotta tell you, these aren't the easiest things to work with. This back here. That's not it. There it is. Well, should we put a junk album on and see if it drops in place? Alright, nothing, no sounds hooked up, but we'll at least see what it does. It's playing. Alright, let's put the case back together. I'm going to put this back on. Now this is a hard item to come by, this front piece. They usually break, the pieces on the side break. So when I put it on, I want to be extremely careful. I don't remember if, I think that goes on the outside, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it does. Now the other thing you got to be careful of, this got cracked in shipping. This plastic for some reason gets extremely brittle with age. On the other one, when I removed the cover, part of it just broke off in my hand. And I know this isn't a perfect fix, but I have an idea on what to coat the inside of this with so that it won't continue cracking or breaking. Now, I'm not putting the screws in too tight. I really don't want to stress this plastic. So I really wish I could actually play you some audio samples from this turntable playing, but you know, because of copyright, YouTube, and all that, I don't have any non-copyrighted vinyl to play. But it really does sound excellent, even with a worn-out stylus. And no, the disc is not spinning at this speed. I'm just speeding up the video to show you how the linear arm goes across the deck, or I'm sorry, across the disc. Also, if you're still watching, I hope that this was somewhat educational, that you learned something. I hope that it would be more so. I thought I had to swap more parts, but it turns out not so much. And due to the great condition that this turntable's in, I'm not going to tear into things I don't need to. I will be doing more videos about this. There's some calibration and adjustments that I have to do, one of which is it plays a slightly too slow, maybe a half an RPM to 1 RPM too slow. And many may not notice it, but I do. It drives me nuts. So I got to take it back apart and do that. Also, I'm going to show you how to, you know, there's some other calibrations that you have to do via the service manual. It explains adjustments for the arm and things like that. So I will be doing more videos on this table. Also, if you're still watching, thank you. I hope it wasn't too boring. I'm still trying to get used to talking on camera. It's not something that I've ever really been good at. So thank you for putting up with my monotone, or how boring the videos might be. So if you have any suggestions or have any questions, please leave them in the comments, and I thank you for watching.